Hi, it's Tim Hagen from Progress Coaching, and welcome to another episode of Coaching Conversations. And I wanted to make you aware of something very cool that we're doing on a subscription basis, and we'll put a link in each one of our episodes. But every Wednesday, we're going to be doing what we call an audio podcast workshop. That workshop will be roughly about 14 to maybe 20 minutes per episode, with each month having a theme from a coaching model, using feedback strategically, to coaching self-awareness, and so on. So if you could look in the body or in the content description of each episode, and you will see a link where you can join this subscription. These are literally 4 workshops every month teaching specific strategies to address a particular area of workplace coaching as it relates, again, to things like awareness, motivation, teamwork, and what have you. Here's the cool thing. It's only $10 per month, and each month you will get a handout that we will follow along with. So we also give you a tool for you to take notes as we go through each episode. We hope you'll check it out.
I think coaching is all about emotional intelligence. And I just had one of the most interesting representations of this. I coach volleyball, and I coach a club volleyball team, a bunch of 14-year-old boys. And when 14-year-old boys play, obviously you can imagine what I'm dealing with, and immaturity and lack of attention. And I always focus on, if they have fun, good things will happen. Well, something interesting happened after our first match this past weekend. Our kids have to run the score table, they have to officiate, they have to line judge, and they have a lot of responsibility. So during the course of a match, a mother came up to me and said, "Are you the head coach?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Could you tell your boys to pay attention?" And I said, "Okay." And she said, "We're losing points because of them." And I looked at her and I said, "So who are you?" She said, "Well, I'm a mother of a player of that team, and they're just sitting here screwing around." Now, keep in mind, when we watch our kids struggle, and clearly this person's kids team was struggling, and we played them next, and we clobbered them, and they weren't a very good team, at least they weren't as of yet, and that happens. And I thought that was so interesting that she walked from about 60 to 75 feet away, walked up to somebody she doesn't know, was clearly emotional and frustrated, and literally said in front of myself, in front of 3 14-year-old boys, in front of the parents that were behind the score table, making sure their kids were not screwing around, they heard it. So then I had 2 parents who wanted to get a little bit upset, and I said, "No, just let it go. This stuff happens." And it was so interesting, because I'm in the midst of becoming certified in emotional intelligence, and we coach to it and teach people how to coach to it. And I think when you think about self-awareness, that is the number one thing with emotional intelligence. Here's the interesting part. And I felt defensive, to be honest. I felt a little bit attacked. And she kept pointing to us throughout the whole match. Their kids lost by 15 points each set. It wasn't even close. So I went to the down ref, who's a sanctioned ref, a young man, and I said, "How'd my kids do?" He said, "Great, why?" I said, "Well, we had a parent bring up the fact that they were getting screwed out of points." And he said, "What are you talking about?" I turned around and checked every single point. They did a great job. And I said, "Okay, just wanted to make sure, I hope you're cool with that." And he said, "Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing this up," and et cetera, et cetera. So as we started talking, I realized something, that this woman's son's team was now going to do the same job our kids were doing. And she was nowhere to be found. So here's the funny thing. The kids from this team that were supposedly getting screwed out of points had a controversy at the score table. They lost track of substitutions or the points, and it can get complicated in volleyball. And she was nowhere to be found. So I walked back into the lunch area away from the courts, and I saw her, and I said, "Hey, do you have a second?" She said, "Sure. What, coach?" I said, "I want to make you aware of something, and I'm not mad. I wanted to give you perspective, if that would be okay." She goes, "What is it?" You could tell she wasn't pleased. I said, "You came all the way around and addressed me and said, my boys were screwing your kids' team out of the point. Well, coach, they weren't paying attention." I said, "I want to give you 2 facts. actually, I want to give you 3 facts. One, I asked the down ref. He said he checked the score after every single point. They're also 14-year-old boys are going to lose it, so I appreciate it. You notice I stayed behind the bench. I said, number 2, how come you're not watching your kids' team ref and score? She looked at me just stunned. I said, here's why I ask you. They just had a controversy at the score table. They lost track of the points. But yet, you found it okay to address me when your kid was playing because our kids were reffing. But yet, you didn't stay to make sure your own kids were doing a good job. And I said, why is that? I literally could not believe her lack of self-awareness. She said, that's not my responsibility. I knew what she meant. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, it's not my responsibility to make sure they're doing a good job. I go, okay, but it's your responsibility to make sure my kids are? And she just went red. Her husband kind of inserted himself and said, honey, he's right. He said, you cannot go up to another team, and if you're not going to hold our own kids accountable, specifically our kid, you cannot do that. And I said, hey, thanks. I said, I'm not trying to be confrontational. I wanted to share that with you because you drew attention to yourself. And the coach noticed, the kids noticed, my parents noticed, my parents wanted to confront you. And I said, I just wanted to lend that self. I said, that's why the down ref is there. We just spent 3 hours the other night going through official training. Have you done that? She said, no. I said, have you ever done it? She said, no. I said, it is really complicated at times. So when we're coaching people, and if we're conscientious, and if we're aware, and if we can have empathy, and we can really talk in a considerate, thoughtful, professional manner, then what we're going to be able to do is be in a mode that we can help people build self-awareness. Now think about that. She went from being pretty upset to her husband saying, honey, he's right. You cannot go up to somebody else if we're not going to do the same thing for our kids. If we're not going to watch our kids ref, you cannot sit here and hold other people accountable. And really what she lost awareness of was her own emotional frustration that her kids' team was getting beat. She was frustrated. And a lot of times what happens when people are frustrated, what do? We got to blame somebody. So remember, coaching is about building self-awareness. And I concluded the conversation. I said, look, I questioned whether to come up to you or not. I said, because when you approach me, you definitely, just so you know, perception-wise, presented anguish and frustration. My kids were not responsible for your kids losing. My kids, according to the down ref, did not miss one beat. But yet your kids did. And then I thought, am I going to come off like I told you so or one-up you? And I said, that's not what I'm trying to do. But that's why these kids are doing this stuff, so they can learn when they do make mistakes. And just so you know, not one parent, not one coach approached those kids or their coaches when your kids were screwing up at the score table. And I mean, not screwing up bad, but certainly making some mistakes, which 14-year-old boys are going to do. Remember, coaching is about awareness, building self-awareness, helping people conversationally see the light.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Coaching Conversations by Tim Hagen and Progress Coaching. Now, our company is always coming out with new and innovative solutions to help leaders coach their employees. And recently, we just created a new service called Coach to You, where leaders can pick and choose topics and assign 7 to 21-day programs for employees to learn and, more importantly, apply actions and then reflect and share what they're going to do going forward as a result of the learning. It's called Coach to You. We're literally bringing coaching to your employees. If you're intrigued, we'll have a link in each one of our episodes where you can get more information. And again, thank you so much for listening to another episode.